What's going on, everybody? It's Scotty here with Flat Track Flashback. And look, before you hit the comments, I know I can't pull this off, but it's for a bit that's related to something outside of this video. And I'm on a short window of time to record these things. So you're stuck with the mustache on this episode. I'm not sure how long it's going to stick around. Maybe I'll keep it until I turn 36, which is sooner than later. But here we go. We're back at it with another installment. Going to get a quick recap of the Peoria TT before we got to take a week off next week. I'll be in New York for the U.S. Open and then got stuff with the World of Outlaws commitment. So won't be able to get a proper Springfield preview, but we'll recap everything that's going on. There are so many things coming up in the next couple of weeks. And you know what? Why don't we just go ahead and start off with a few upcoming events before we dive into the recap stuff. So let's look forward before we look back. Coming up on Thursday, you got Fredericktown Yamaha. I'm going to lean back. Fredericktown Yamaha celebrating 50 years up there in Frederick, Maryland. They've got some super cool things going on up there to celebrate that anniversary. They'll have appearances from Cruz and Corey Texter, Cam Smith, OTB Racing's Brandon Price and Declan Bender. And this is a big one. Ryan Villapoto is going to be stopping by as well. We got a chance to talk to Ian Riley of Fredericktown Yamaha about that. And so you can check out that event, support those that awesome dealership. They've been huge investors really in flat track racing, supported a lot of riders and really helped this sport out a ton. So support Fredericktown Yamaha if you're able to there Thursday. And then Friday, we've got the Greenville Fair race, the Darke County Fairgrounds. How we doing, Roger, that helping with that iconic track and a super cool event out there as we've got a week off of AFT racing. Now, additionally, this coming weekend, we've got FIM Flat Track back in action. Sammy Halbert, fresh off his new home here in the Charlotte area, flying out to Germany to try to get back in that title fight there, looking to close the gap there on current points leader Irvin Krajcevic and the rest of the guys that are contesting for that FIM championship. And then Labor Day weekend, it's coming up before we know it. That Friday night, the Springfield Short Track, it's back on. Jared Mees and Corey Texter partnering to keep that event going. And the Springfield Short Track is just so iconic and such a great way to start off Labor Day weekend there in Springfield. Before you get the doubleheader on the mile, you've got the Triple Challenge there on Saturday and then your Standard National on Sunday. Also, me being a big Speedway Grand Prix fan, they've got their penultimate race overseas on August 30th as well. So there's a ton of racing coming up, but before all that happens, of course, we have to look back at everything that took place at the Peoria TT. And man, it was a hot day, at least from what everybody says and from what the forecast reads. Very, very brutal conditions there in Peoria, down in that valley where you probably don't get a whole lot of reprieve from the heat with wind and anything. You have to find a shady spot, but the crowd that was out there, they were into it. It was fun seeing and hearing some of the commentary from the fans that they pick up on the microphones there on the broadcast. Glad people are still able to attend that event and support that iconic track. It was never really like my favorite national growing up. I've never been like a huge TT fan. And also for so many years was almost predictable. Chris Carr was going to win and then Henry Wiles was going to win. And now we've got a little more parity in this event. But man, this track was very technical, very dry day. A lot of, like I said, talked about super hot. It got really grooved up, very dry, slick. There was a lot of prep that went on before the main events. It seemed to help out the racing a little bit. But yeah, let's kick things off. We're going to start talking about the twins class, and then we'll dive into the singles as well. And there's a lot of shakeups. Twins class. Last week we talked about how I thought it was going to be a pivotal race for Breyer, a must-win situation to me, because if Dallas was able to get that win and carry momentum into the miles where that Yamaha we know is going to be really, really strong, and no shade against the Harley, but the two Harleys were 4th and 5th in DuQuoin, and just have to kind of feel like the Yamahas might be the favorites there on the mile. So Breyer needed to get as many points as he could there on Dallas, and man, he and Dallas were just on another level all day. They were the quickest two in qualifying. Henry Wiles was close-ish, but in qualifying, he was still half a second off of the time that Breyer set, and Breyer and Dallas each won their heat races, although Dallas had his work cut out for him. He was not getting great starts. On the contrary, Max Whale was launching off the line. Max leading that heat race, Dallas able to navigate his way through and end up picking the victory up in that second heat race and go on to the Mission Challenge. Breyer was able to get the better of him in that challenge race, holding him off and picking up that $5,000 from Mission Foods. Very vocal, both of them in their interviews, about not necessarily loving the conditions on the track. Felt like they were going super slow, had to really hit their marks to not slip off the groove. And just a very tricky technical Peoria TT there on Saturday. As we head into the main event, this will be the first time that Breyer wouldn't really get out in front of the pack. Max Whale, once again, great start. Dallas Daniels gets into second. Breyer slots into third. And those were the top three on the opening lap. coming across the finish line, going into 1 and 2. Slight little bobble by Dallas opens the door, and Breyer pounces, gets underneath Dallas side by side with Max, clears him going over the jump, and Max kind of took a look over his shoulder, saw Dallas there, and sort of gave way and let the two title contenders settle it amongst themselves at the front of the field. And Breyer would just clock off laps and was just consistently a little bit quicker than Dallas, just a slight edge ahead there in Peoria on the day. Pulled out a pretty significant lead by their standards, at least. Got it up north of a second, was able to maintain that gap, navigating through lap traffic. And, that was pretty much all that they rode up front. Breyer comes home, gets his 7th victory of the season, a massive win for Breyer. Not only is that the most, or his career best in a season, picking up that 7th victory, but now he's got 2 more wins than Dallas with just 3 rounds left. So that could potentially be vital in terms of maybe tiebreakers later on in the championship. We'll see kind of what happens there in Springfield and onwards. Additionally, for Breyer, it's 33 wins on his career, which ties him with Brian Smith and Kenny Roberts. Just insane company that Breyer has joined this year, joining the top 10 in all-time wins. And he's closing in on Bubba Schobert, and he's not that far off of Ricky Graham, only 6 victories off of the other Salinas, number 3, the legendary Ricky Graham, in all-time wins. So very, I would say, achievable goals for Breyer if he's thinking about that at all. But short-term goals right now is just getting through Springfield and bringing home a 3rd championship. Dallas, with that runner-up finish, does pretty much his damage control and stays close and still very much in the title fight. Those two continue to just be a level above everybody else right now. And just it showed, especially there in Peoria. 3rd place was 19 seconds back of Breyer, 18 seconds back of Dallas, which is a massive, massive gap when they were turning 27, 28-second lap times there in Thunder Valley. We talked about Maxwell. He would slot into 3rd place. Jared Vanderkooi would get around him and end up taking over 3rd and kind of settle in there and get that 2nd podium on the year and finally breaking through for a podium at Peoria. He's been so close. So many 4th place finishes for Jared there in Peoria, but man, he grinds it out and gets that podium there in Peoria. And actually with struggles that Davis Fisher had battling that bike here on Saturday, Vanderkooi is now tied with Fisher in points. We'll talk about that shortly. Maxwell would unfortunately be under fire pretty much the whole race. He had quite the battle with Trent Lowe, who was just putting on an absolute show coming through the pack. He was all over the place. Pretty much seemed like he was throwing things at a wall and seeing what stuck, and was very, very entertaining to watch Trent navigate through the pack and get up there in the battle with Max. But unfortunately, he would have some bike woes as well and end up, he got as high as, 5th, was fighting for 4th there in the main event, but ended up slipping back to 7th. And it was the last rider on the lead lap at the end of the race. But while Breyer was out front, checked out, Bronson Bauman, riding that Andrew Butler prepared Yamaha that Colby Carlisle rode on the Lima Amateur Day, with Bronson on a brand new bike once again, and gets right up there in the fight for the top 5 and was able to get around Maxwell very late in the race and come home with a 4th place finish. So cool seeing Bronson back in the mix. And that 4th place finish is actually his best in the twins class since 2022 when he finished 4th at Laconia. So awesome seeing Bronson back up there. Hopefully he's able to get a bike and be able to contest the next 3 rounds of this series. Real quick, jumping back to Trent, we're kind of late on this, but congratulations to Trent and Shelby on the engagement. Wishing you guys all the best in your wedding planning. Looking now down the line, looking at the championship here, we talked about Breyer Bauman out front, leads Dallas by 11 points, and they have checked out. They're way ahead of Brandon Robinson, who sits 3rd. He's got a decent little advantage over Davis Fisher and Jared Vanderkooi, who are tied for 4th there. Trent still sitting in 6th, and James Odd in 7th. Probably glad to be done with the TTs after having to come home with a 8th and a 12th on the 2 TT rounds. Bromley, 8th place in points. Maxwell right there in 9th. That battle, just 10 points separating 6th through 9th. How about Declan Bender? He's probably also looking forward to miles as opposed to TTs, but he is inside the top 10 in points, 2 clear of Logan McGrain now. And with these 2 miles coming up and a clay, short track, that's very sort of carry your momentum around with Lake Ozark. Declan could be in line for a very strong end to his 2025 campaign. And I, fully expect that, barring anything disastrous, Declan will be there in the top 10 in points for the end of the year. Now let's look ahead at some titles, or some Springfield hypotheticals, a few scenarios that might play out there on the mile. So as we head into the doubleheader weekend, there's several ways this championship could take a massive shakeup. I'm going to look at scenario 1 here, and that's if Dallas Daniels wins both main events in Springfield and Breyer finishes 2nd and 3rd in those 2 main events. That would create a tie atop the points. Both riders would be sitting on 7 wins and tied on championship points heading into Lake Ozark, which would set up the ultimate winner-take-all, just 16th rounds, one-on-one for the championship. And that would be epic. From a fan standpoint, that might be the more favorable option, although Dallas and Breyer probably feel a little bit different on what they would like as far as a comfort zone going into Ozark. But that's one way to look at it. And another, if Dallas were to win both main events in Springfield and Breyer finishes second in both, Breyer would carry a 3-point lead into Lake Ozark, which would set up a relatively similar scenario. That 4-point gap between first and second would be a winner-take-all situation if either one of them won at Lake Ozark. There's several other players who could get involved. I'm looking at this as if Dallas and Breyer are just going to be first and second. Additional things I want to kind of touch on here. Let's imagine that they split. If they were to split victories there in Springfield, go 1-2 and 1-2 each, Breyer would keep his 11-point advantage heading into Lake Ozark, and he would need to finish 6th or better. Breyer, with a win in Springfield, would clinch that tiebreaker for most wins on the season at 8, because the most that Dallas would be able to get would be 7, with Brandon Robinson also having that victory there at Sturgis. So if Breyer's able to carry an 11-point lead into Lake Ozark, that gives him a little bit of breathing room. However, let's think about if Breyer were to win both main events and Dallas finished second in both main events, then Breyer would carry a 19-point lead into Lake Ozark and only need to finish 14th or better to bring home a championship. Kind of not a good situation for Dallas if that were to carry out. Let's say Dallas wins both main events and Breyer were to finish third in both main events. Well, then Dallas would take a 3-point lead into Lake Ozark. And once again, if either of them were to win the race, well, that would be your champion. In this situation, Dallas's victory would give him a 7-point advantage. A Breyer victory would give him a 1-point advantage in the title, leaving Lake Ozark. Now, here's one that would end the title at Springfield, one of many that could potentially end the championship at Springfield. But let's hope that we get to carry our championship all the way to Lake Ozark. Imagine Breyer wins both main events at Springfield and Dallas is only able to manage a 3rd-place finish. Well, that would give Breyer a 25-point lead at the end of Springfield, at the end of Labor Day weekend, and he would clinch the championship there at Springfield. So, that whole team, that Rick Ware Racing team, is going to have that Harley ready to rip. And just as Essenson wants that Yamaha ready to take the fight all the way down to Lake Ozark, I don't personally see a scenario playing out where this championship is decided either way at Springfield. Now, Breyer had those 2 DNFs, major clutch issues at Springfield last year, and Dallas was coming off of that broken femur and just getting back into racing, but he still got on the box there on that Yamaha on both main events, that Marathon Day Sunday that saw Jared Mees just dominate his event. So Mees stepping back into the promoter role, and don't think he's going to hop on a bike and decide to race, but he could certainly play spoiler in this, just as the likes of Brandon Robinson, Jared Vanderkoy, Davis Fisher, James Ott, Declan Bender, and the whole rest of the Twins field could factor in to taking points away and shaking things up in this Super Twins class. On the single side of things, it looked like we were shaping up to see last year's big 3 of Cody Kopp, Tom Drain, and Chase Sadoff write another chapter in their storied rivalry that they had. But unfortunately for 2 of those riders, they would see their days really compromised, and a championship hopeful sees his title hopes really kind of come crashing down, literally. And that's Chase Sadoff had a brutal get off in qualifying. He was behind Tom Drain at the time, actually had the fastest lap at this time, but a massive high side off the landing of the jump there in Peoria. And it would send Sadoff to the hospital and end his day. He would not be able to compete in the race, not able to get back to the track and use a professional or anything. And just took him out of competition for the day. Just a brutal incident there for the defending race winner. And thankfully, we did get to see an Instagram update from Chase. He seems to be in good spirits. He's been released from the hospital, nursing a concussion as well as a wrist and an ankle injury. We'll see what transpires with that. He's going to get it checked out. So make sure you stay tuned to Chase Sadoff's social channels and follow along with his healing. And he hopes to be back for Springfield, and we would love to see that as well. Chase, an Illinois rider, and definitely wants to represent for the FBI there, and still try to pick up a couple more victories, and at least not let Tom completely have this championship that easy. But Drain's certainly in a good spot there. Cody Kopp's return to the flat track scene didn't go that great earlier in the day. A couple of issues with the chain, one completely snapping in practice and qualifying, and the other popping or coming off the track there in the heat race, which forced him to the back of a last chance qualifier. He had to dodge a first turn crash on the initial start of that LCQ, and battle back from the back row to end up taking the victory in the last chance race, starting 4th row in the main event, had his work cut out for him. Tom Drain, hey, with his rivals having issues, he capitalized in a massive way. Drain was the best rider all day, it seemed, at Peoria. He was able to get the better of Trevor Bruner by almost 5 seconds in a heat race, and got the better of Trevor in the World of Power Sports Challenge. The singles guys getting a little extra cash, getting a dash for themselves there on the day. And in the main event, we did have a restart. Braden Fanders went down, and definitely having a forgettable day in Peoria. Braden not having the great, sort of momentum carrying day that he was hoping after that top 5, that 4th place finish there in Sturgis, not able to carry the momentum into Peoria. His Instagram post about saying the jump was fun, and that was about it for Peoria for Braden. But red flag comes out, Braden okay, able to continue the race. On the restart of the singles main event, Bruner gets out front, leads Drain for a lap, but Tom gets underneath him in 1 and 2, and that was all we wrote for the singles class as far as the battle for the lead. Tom would check out. He won this race by over 8 seconds. Biggest margin of victory for American Flat Track in 2025. Tom's no stranger to dominating victories. We saw what he was able to do in Lima. And man, he just stomped them in Peoria. For Tom, it's his first TT victory. So now he gets to join the Grand Slam Club. What's up, Denny's? And also gets his 16th career singles victory. And more importantly than that, for at least this season, is with Chase Sadoff unable to race, Tom gets to capitalize in the biggest way possible. He now sits 39 points ahead of Sadoff going into the final 3 rounds of the season. And while that doesn't clinch the championship, if Tom wins Springfield's Triple Challenge and Chase doesn't finish second that day, the championship's going to get decided that first day in Springfield. Essenson's going to be having that 450 ready to rip and keep their strength on the miles. Tom victorious there in DuQuoin, and he and Chase got a little sporty there. We remember how that race went, so let's see if the singles class keeps us on our toes and has our blood pressure and heart rate through the roof during the singles main events at Springfield on that doubleheader weekend. But massive day for Tom, and definitely sort of has the championship not locked down, but he's inching ever closer. That door is more than just cracked open at this point for Tom Drain to bring home his first AFT championship. Now, behind Tom, things were quite sporty. Cage Tadman got a great start. He was up as high as 3rd before just didn't seem to have the pace that the leading pack had. He would end up falling back to 7th before the race is over, but a strong debut for him on that first impressions ride. The first couple of guys that were able to get by him were Cody Kopp and Terrence Santero, and they charged right up on the backside of Bruner. And we had a couple of moments in this battle, one of which Cody trying to keep the momentum going. And, if one of these riders, Santero or Kopp, were able to make the pass stick on Bruner, who knows, maybe they could have chased down Tom late in this singles main event, but just not able to make the pass stick. And at one point, Bruner's back end steps out on him. It makes contact with the front of Cody Kopp. Fortunately, neither rider goes down, but that allows Santero to get by Cody. And then Cody and Santero would be sliding each other. They would push each other around the track a little bit. Just insane racing back there. And Taryn was an absolute highlight reel throughout the day. He sailed past Roos Evans for a heat race lead to get the win there earlier in the day. Passed him over the jump. He was up in the grass at points. Had a couple of sketchy landings off the jump there. Just Taryn putting on an absolute show. Just pure chaos for the 75 there. But he wanted it, and they were definitely pushing the limits there on the 450s. Ultimately, in this battle, Bruner's able to hold off both of those riders, and Santero comes home with the podium over Kopp, and Aiden Roos Evans would come home 5th, and with a few more laps, Roos Evans might have been pretty sporty in that battle for the podium as well. He was only half a second off of Cody come the end of this race, and Dalton Gauthier he mentioned he was in the pain cave in a post-race post on his social channels, but he comes home 6th, pulling double duty, running the adventure tracker and the singles class. We had several riders pulling double duty and turning a lot of laps out there in the heat. Props to you guys, because I can't imagine how much sweat you guys burned through that day in Thunder Valley. It would be interesting to see what the starting weight was on the day versus where you ended. You probably could have cut enough pounds to make weight for UFC fights. Behind those top 6, we mentioned Cage Tadman brings home the first impressions bike in 7th. His teammate Chad Coates comes home in 8th. Thomas Herrick wraps up his run here stateside. The Australian champion comes home 9th, his best finish of this little run. And Jared Lowe brings up the top 10. So as we look ahead now, we talked about Tom's pretty solid point lead. He's got 39 over Chase. Behind Chase, Trevor Bruner in 3rd. And he's got 19 points still to gain on Chase Sadoff. So still a lot of work for Trevor if he wants to get up into 2nd place. Then Santero with that performance at podium. Back around Roos Evans for fourth in points by just one. And that battle for fourth in the singles points is still going to go down to the very last round because there's still 5 riders all separated by 29 points. So there could be a lot of shuffling going on at Springfield as well as Lake Ozark. We didn't get to see Evan Renshaw at Peoria. Talked about him not being on the first impressions ride anymore. He still sits 9th in points. Chad Coe sitting 10th, and Dalton Gauthier 11th with how many rounds he's missed, man. It's a shame that Dalton couldn't get that full season under his belt with the injury in Sonoy and other factors at play. But man, every time Dalton shows up, he's a factor. He's been inside the top 10 every race that he's finished. We mentioned the DNF at Sonoy and then the Lima Triple Challenge where he didn't finish all those races either. But top 10 every race that he's run every lap in. Man, I saw you got a new website out there, maybe new merch coming. And let me tell you something. There is no rider in Flat Track that has better merch than Dalton Gauthier. So if he has a new drop coming, help support him. Again, this adventure tracker thing is still not my favorite, but they gave us great personalities and some pretty solid racing. It's this particular, if I could get this out, it'd be easier to say, but this particular race, man, it came down to the last turn of the last lap. And the track got worked a good bit before the main event. Several riders not loving it. It was really slippery. Henry Wiles voicing some concerns about the racing surface as well. Wiles would get a very bad start in this main event, and it would leave Jesse Janish out front. Dan Bromley slotted into second, and Danny Eslick in third. And Eslick was able to get around Bromley and push Janish to the end. These two on the last lap, Danny Eslick trying to make a hero move up the inside just after the right-hander, but couldn't make it stick, ended up going off track. Janish able to survive the dive bomb and bring home another victory ahead of Bromley. Eslick able to get back on track for a third-place finish. But Janish wins the battle. Bromley wins the war, and Bromley gets to bring home the number 1 plate for the adventure trackers. He also got to take home some solid bruising on his foot. So in addition to the number 1 plate, it's a nice discoloration there on his leg when he gets to go back home after a long weekend in Peoria. But man, huge props to everybody that was pulling double duty out there at the Peoria TT in those conditions, man. Dan Bromley, Dalton Gauthier, Henry Wiles, Hunter Bauer, Cole King, all these guys turning so many laps on that track in Peoria. You guys are gnarly. And now this brings me to our weekly categories. And I guess this is something that has gotten kind of popular on social media. I've gotten a lot of decent feedback for these things. You see on, like, pardon my take, when they rank NFL teams, you see in motorsports.com or something. I don't know off the top of my head right now, but there's a MotoGP ranking system, and they sort of have like a power rankings thing for teams, and add a little humor. Sort of our take on that is creating these categories for the classes. And as you can see on these graphics, I forgot to change the capitalization of singles, but maybe that's just me saying that Super Twins is the more premier class. But with our category graphics, I'll go ahead and throw them up here on the screen. You guys can check them out. We'll also post these on social media. It's been fun kind of putting these together, and it's been fun seeing you guys give us feedback on these little graphics. So thanks for engaging on that. As we also look at other racing that took place over the weekend, some flat track stars that shine up in the Flat Track Canada series there in Oshweekend. We got to see Justin Jones take home a victory. Cool to see Jones up there, still racing after, a rough get off there at the Sturgis TT. They mentioned they were going to sit out Peoria as far as the Twins program goes for first impressions, but Jones making the most of the off weekend and picks up a victory there in one of the expert classes up in Oshweekend. And Brandon Siegwing brings home another victory as well. Congratulations to Brandon on getting another win on the season. Oshweekend was a really cool track to do the World of Outlaws races from back in May when we had broadcasts up there. That track got really, really slick, but it's super wide, and I don't know if there's any way to partner with American Flat Track and Flat Track Canada, but having a national at Oshweekend might be something to consider. It'd be cool to see, the American Flat Track series factor in another country in North America. And if we can get everybody, I guess everybody has to make sure they can get their passports and get across the border to run around up there. But there's some really cool tracks up in Canada, and Oshweekend's definitely one of them. So the winning streak for Liam Caskey comes to an end up there over the weekend. Liam Caskey's still a dominating run all season long there in the Flat Track Canada series. And additionally, let's give a shout out to our flat trackers who are finding success over in Moto America. First off, JD Beach, after the win the first day at Mid-Ohio, was riding a 3-race win streak in the Stock 1000 class, was right there in the title fight, entered the weekend only 10 points back. But unfortunately, the luck would run out for JD, unable to start the second race there in Mid-Ohio, and that winning streak comes to an end. He doesn't pick up any points in that second race, and now his title fight took a hit after being right there in the mix with that winning streak going. He now sits 26 points back of the SOC 1000 points lead with just 1 weekend left for that class. They will not be contesting COTA and New Jersey. They've only got the 1 weekend left, the 2 races. So JD's going to need a little bit of help, and as well as probably a weekend sweep to be able to steal that SOC 1000 class. But hey, it could happen. You can come from behind to win these championships. As James Rispoli found out in the Super Hooligans class, Hog Spoli sweeps the weekend in Mid-Ohio and brings home the Super Hooligan Championship. And it would be awesome to see James bring Hog Spoli back to flat track with maybe an XG next year. So, hey, James, give us another shot, man. But for now, enjoy the celebrations. He's still got some work to do in the baggers class, still going to be racing Moto America over there for a few more rounds and bringing that season to a close, but gets the number 1 plate in the Super Hooligans class, gets the walk-off there in Mid-Ohio with the weekend sweep. Congratulations, James Rispoli, on those victories. James, just an amazing personality, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Such a great person to have in the sport of motorcycle racing, regardless where he is, whether it was flat track or British Superbike or Moto America, wherever James is, he brings the vibes, man. Just an amazing vibes guy, and has that awesome podcast with Corey Alexander, Pipe Dreams. Which brings me to my usual praise of everybody that's involved in this sport and making content around it, whether it's a podcast, a YouTube channel, sponsors, riders, everybody, promoters, anybody that's involved in this sport and helping flat track stay afloat and try to make this thing grow. Thank you guys so much for all the hard work that you put into making this sport what it is. We've got the most amazing form of motorcycle racing on the planet. We've got one of the few sports that generally brings a championship fight all the way to the final rounds. You're not going to see that in MotoGP this year. Probably aren't going to see much of it in Supercross and Motocross either. Supercross gave us a fun little battle with Cooper Webb and Chase Sexton, but man, the Lawrence brothers are just wreaking havoc in pro motocross. And we'll see what happens with the playoff system there for Super Motocross. As we mentioned at the top, so many cool events coming your way here in the coming weeks. The Fredericktown Yamaha 50th anniversary, the Greenville, Ohio Fair Race, Springfield Short Track, FIM Flat Track, the Springfield Mile, Speedway Grand Prix. So much stuff to keep an eye on and follow along with the sport. Again, we're not going to have a video coming out next week, at least not a recap video. I have a few throwback videos in the vault that I might load up. We've got a couple of old school Savannah races and a 85cc race from Travelers Rest that features one of the top riders in the singles class, one of the top storylines, at least in the singles class this year, features him getting after it there in Travelers Rest. So maybe we'll throw those up throughout the week next week and give you guys a little bit of content on the channel. Springfield recap is going to be a lengthy one just to see you guys coming on board and to help support this channel. I definitely never thought it would ever get 100 subscribers, let alone 1,000. So to everybody that's subscribed and supports this channel, that likes the Instagram stuff, that follows along with us, that comments on this, shares the videos, subscribes to the channel. Like we said, thank you guys so much for supporting this little project that we've got going. Love you guys. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy all the racing that's coming up, and let's support this sport. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.